Right, so that's the general facing of that complete now, and basically the general facing, as I would call it, is the conventional manner in which on my lathe I would lock off with this lever the saddle from moving back and forth, lock it off like that, and now as much force as I put on the hand wheel, the carriage won't move back. On this occasion now we're going to put the dome, if you like, on the end of the buffer. So I'm taking the lock off so that the main carriage can move back and forth along the lathe. And the way I'm going to put the cone, or the dome if you like, on the buffer is with this radius stick method, as we call it. And we looked at this system earlier in photographs and such. This is the attachment to the lathe that's going to create this radius stick business. Now this is clamped to the lathe bed underneath here and underneath on the back on the other side there, but it's not really clamped sufficiently to cope with the exerted pressures that are used in this particular instance. So I've had to put this other rod in here, which is bracing against the lathe headstock itself, so that then stops this thing swivelling and pushing back. So on the top slide, if you recall, we made a little pinprick which is there, and the point goes into the pinprick, and then we roll the carriage forward until this end goes into there, and that bar then becomes supported between the two. So I'll just do that now and then we'll come back. Right, so there's the radius bar suspended between the 2 points, which we're going to put the radius on the end of this buffer. So let's have a look at the process without the machine running. So the way it works now is that as I advance the top slide across, it will move this point here across, but because that distance is a set distance, this bar will tend to push the carriage back to the tailstock. So we'll have a look at that now. I'll wind across the top slide. This is how we're going to do the machining, and you'll see below my hand the blue wheel of the carriage is turning itself, and that's because the radius rod is pushing the main carriage back to the headstock because I've not locked it off. If I was facing in a normal manner, I would have locked this carriage off from moving backwards, but because I want to form a radius, I need the carriage to move backwards, and so we can see the blue handle turning slightly as I'm advancing the cross slide across the face of the work. And if we look at the tool now, I've pulled it clear of the work just for now. We'll see it in operation shortly, but that tool is forming an arc across the front of that buffer head, if you like. So when you get to the centre, point, we need to retract the tool back to you, the operator. But if we watch the radius stick, that will drop out, because now the carriage is reversed away from the headstock, and that stick will drop out. and that's what happens. So as you're winding this back with your other hand, I apply pressure this way towards the headstock. Not a lot of pressure, just enough pressure to ensure that I'm forcing against this to keep this in place rather than it coming out. So that's the way it works. So let's have a look at the job in operation. So I've repositioned this now such that it will start to take a cut, and each time we take a cut we will move the top slide in 10 thou, and then we will move the cross slide across, forming the arc, and when we bring the cross slide back we must ensure that the main saddle has pressure against it so that the bar doesn't drop out. Put some more light on. Put some cutting fluid on. Tool cuts and then goes into no man's land, so it's time to withdraw the tool. So I'm winding the top slide back and keeping pressure now on the carriage toward the headstock. So I'm putting another 10 thou on the top slide. Now I'm winding in the cross slide. Taking a 10 thou cut on the radius. Now the radius tool has pushed the tip of the cutting tool too far away, as it would do, forming the radius. So we need to withdraw the top slide again, whilst maintaining pressure on the carriage, sorry. Withdrawing the tool with a bit of pressure on the main carriage. That's far enough. I'm advancing the cutting tool 10 thou with the top slide. Now I'm moving the cross slide in again, and the main carriage is being pushed away from the headstock by the radius rod, forming a radius on the head of this buffer. Now it's not cutting anymore, so it's time to withdraw the tool while maintaining a bit of pressure on the main carriage toward the headstock, otherwise the rod would fall out. Putting another 10 thou onto the top slide, winding in the cross slide. The radius rod is pushing the main carriage away, and again it will form the radius. Now I'm withdrawing the tool again. I'll show you, but you could probably, I'll get that to cut. See how it's cutting there? That's because I'm exerting too much pressure on the carriage hand wheel. So you only need enough pressure to make sure the rod's not going to fall out. If when you get down to finished size and you put too much pressure on, you will tend to cut into and ruin the face that you're trying to produce. So I'm putting another 10,000 on, 10 thou cut. That was on the top slide. Now winding the cross slide in. And we just continue this process until the cutting tool is directly in the middle of your workpiece. Now I'm sure there's a lot more technical way of working this out, but due to the angle on the back of this buffer head and the angle on the front of the buffer head, it's very difficult to measure along that for thickness. So what I did, I put some insulation tape, as you can see, on my digital readout, and when the insulation tape just touched the edge of the buffer, I then brought the two measuring parts together that would be somewhere near what I would be looking for. So if we came across then to the lathe and we tried that on there, we would see that we're still up on our measurement 111. So if I drop it to when the tape just touches the outer edge, so we're at 157, 151. So we need some more to come off. There's the radius gauge that I'm using to help me form the radius on the edge of the buffer. We can just see it there, and that was a piece of brass with a hole drilled through, and then it was ground away, filed away to form half a hole that gave me a radius to work to. That's good. Quick polish now with some emery cloths and wire wool, and we're happy. I think we're good at that. That's reasonable.